Greetings. Welcome to Growing Testimonies. We have more people tonight. And today I felt, before we go ahead to women, there was a key subject that we need to talk about manhood. And we probably need to expound upon it. As a young man, and I'll speak about myself, as a young man, I felt the need to express my manhood and notches on the belt in terms of how many sexual partners that I could entertain. And as I got older, I felt, that if I'm upset with one, then go find somebody else to be with. That old myth of to get over one, get under another. You know, which end up into be a cycle of, let's see, bondage, which created a self-medication for different stress that I could not handle emotionally based on whatever ego I had at the time to manifest through sexual expression that was not so positive. And I would like to say, now that I have, grown to a point to understand that sexual intercourse is meant to be shared between two people who truly have genuine feelings for each other, who truly want to connect and protect each other, in that intercourse. Whatever teaches on, because I know there are various lifestyles out there. But again, we're trying to go from the dysfunction to the function. And if you are entertaining certain unhealthy lifestyles, I would like to charge you with why. Why are you entertaining these lifestyles? Is it because of peer pressure? What is, and this could go for male or female, what is the root source of why you have to? Think about what I just said. Why do you have to? And just coming from my experience, I had an unconscious expectation put on myself based on other men that, I saw in my life and their experiences, and what they did to cope with stress and things of that nature. But to be totally honest, anytime, I cheated, I had no manhood, and if you need a little graphic understanding, I had no manhood, for when I cheated, because I was created to be a faithful person, me personally, and I know some men can entertain several women full throttle, but, you know, uh, based on my experiences, welcome RJ, thank you. And you're right, being married, it should be in a married covenant. It should be in a protected, covenant to entertain such intercourse, you know, and I I know that there are so many different values on this right now with the high promiscuous society that in which we live, whether it's homosexual society or heterosexual society or just a free for all. But again, I would like to charge you, what is the root of why you must, or you feel that that is just a necessary component out of a protected covenant, you know? And just to kind of finish off on where I was, I finally got to the point of what the root of my sexual expression was. Once I found some wholeness, some completeness, with my relationship with God. And when He filled the voids that I didn't even recognize that I had, the void that I had was I was going from woman to woman to woman because I really didn't have the relationship with Him that put me at ease, no matter how my egg yolk of weak emotional state was poured out, stabbed, or however, I had nothing to bounce back on. All I had was ego and emotion. And I had no God center to balance that out with me.
So I have a question.
Okay.
We have a room full of men,
Okay.
and I think that we need to make sure that the ladies understand that this is tonight. This show is actually going to play to their advantage because they actually get to know what was it that you guys saw, and did you mimic it from the beginning? That's what we want to know. Where did you get it from before you knew what your center was? Where did you get it from before you knew what manhood really was when a real man taught you that, or did you learn that on your own? So what we want to know is go all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
Take us back to the beginning where it all started, because guess what? We knew you guys when you were in school and you were boys. So where did it start? Was it the men that taught you that?
Of course, it was older kids in our neighborhood. Well, for me, it was older kids in our neighborhood. This is what you're supposed to do. I mean, it started off as, I guess my first time was in ninth, 10th grade, something. And it was the expectation put by other guys, at school. This is what you should be doing in a relationship.
Okay. What about you?
Well, for me, manhood started at the home. But you got to look at the fact that I was the oldest son. I had 5 sisters, 1 brother, and myself. So being the oldest son, responsibility is on him. Anything goes wrong in the house, it's my fault. I had 2 older sisters, but it's still the oldest boy's fault. Maybe I get in a fight with my sisters, my fault. You don't beat on women. You don't fight women. You don't do this. So my manhood training came from mommy and daddy. Understand though, my actual daddy didn't exist in my life. He didn't exist in my life because he died. So I grew up with a stepfather. So it's a dynamic growing up with somebody as a surrogate, not looking at them as your father,
Right.
but it's a father figure.
Right.
And that father figure, when that father figure disciplines you, you make the excuse in your mind, well, my daddy wouldn't do this, and who are you to do this? And you create these kinds of resentments. But as time went on, the man that has been my father all my life, I thanked him. I thanked him because he made me get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and clean the dirt yard outside. I thanked him because I had to take care of all the pets that my brothers and my sisters wanted that I never wanted, but I was responsible for it. And I grew up in the north, so we take pets out in the snow. And I had to get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning to take the pets out. I thanked him for all of his pushing me to do this and making me do that, all the things that I hated as a young boy. Why? Because it gave me strength, it gave me discipline, it gave me a focus. A focus for what? A focus of learning how to tolerate. Tolerate how to, I can't change this. Tolerate how to be pressured without breaking, how to be pressured without getting angry and trying to hit something back, how to learn how to take the blame for things that's not necessarily your blame, but it's somebody's blame, but the responsibility is put on you.
Okay, you guys are still high level. Why did you go back and thank him?
I went back and thanked him because as time passed, it helped me in my adult life to learn how to deal with people, especially women. My mama, every time it came up with an issue with my sisters, where I want to hit them or I want to fight with them, I would get a beating. I would get a talk to. And as I got older, she pulled me out into the, we have an apartment complex and you have this little room where you rent out, right? She goes, go wait for me in the room. And she comes in with a big old board. And she goes, I will break you in two. I brought you in here and I'll take you out of here. And you look at that and you kind of laugh inside, but you see the big old board. It's like, okay, you can't break me in two. I'm 16, 17 years old, so that ain't going to work. But you got this big old board. You might could do something with that.
Yeah, that's hard.
But I'm like, how you going to swing this board? It's about 6 feet. It take a little while for you to get that thing around, but she came here with a board. So I think I better listen to what she has to say.
Right.
I thanked him because I appreciated that when I was on my own, and I was forced to do work previously, to do all the things I didn't like to do, you find out when you become an adult that you're always doing some things you don't like to do. But it gave me the training on how to accept it and tolerate it and work with it without getting angry to want to beat everybody that comes and do something that I don't want them to do or tell me what to do or how to be and how not to be.
So now I hear that, and I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I still want to know, and I think the women want to know. And you giving us some high-level information. What we want to know is that manhood portion of it that we look to you guys for, that we so have to have in our lives. How do you want us to recognize it? and how do you want us to respect that? We know where it comes from, but you have to almost teach us, I am like this because of this, and here's what I'd like for you to do with it.
Well, let me change gears on my first. Let me close out my first because I was trying to say that, you know, your sex life doesn't make you a man. You
Right,
know,
right.
well, let me say this. If you allow your sex drive to drive you, then you have not been able to stand firm as a man to, govern your life in a more I just put it like to make it simple. I don't feel you are representing the ideal man or the God man when you allow sex to drive you versus allowing things to happen in its proper place.
So you mean, like,
So
for instance, the boys who, when you were growing up, if the boy got a girl pregnant, the boy, well, they pat him on the back, go ahead, son.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
they would ship the
naturally,
girl off,
right.
and she'd have to have the baby, some of the family or so. So when men and boys are raised like that, to realize I got away with that, and the more girls I sleep with, the more man I am. How do they change? How do they change that around them?
I think when you recognize that you're trying to fill an unfillable void, you're trying to fill an unfillable void through people, whereas that void is only filled through God. And when you become whole and find some peace through consistently establishing, cultivating that relationship with God, then you recognize the error of your ways. I mean, nobody chooses to have 20 kids and 5 different women, to have those kids. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't think people set out in their mind that I really want this dysfunctional way of life. You know what I'm saying? And but these cases exist. And kind of changing gears that I got that point across. Looking at where he was coming from with character development at a young age. I mean, if I swept the driveway and there was one leaf in there, my mom made me do it all over again. It was discipline. So the work ethic was never a problem with me. It was instilled in me at a young age. And with my children now, that's what I instill in them. As soon as you want to start wanting to help, and especially when you got younger kids and older kids, the young kids always want to do what the older kids do. So if they got chores, the young kids are like, well, I want to do it too. So it becomes easy, to instill that. But I want to take them to a higher level, like you said, get to a higher standard, and prevent some of these voids from you know manifesting, based on societal norms.
Okay, so you guys just be real and just say this. We realize that you were boys at one time, and we know that the light had to switch on at some point to say, I'm not gonna be that guy like that. I'm not gonna be the guy that is driven by the sex. So when did the light come on? When did you decide that?
Okay, I can't accept that. And I'll tell you why I can't accept that. Because that paradigm was never my paradigm.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I grew up an introvert.
Oh, all
I
right.
grew up woman shy. So I had to learn, and it took me to being 30 years old that I can just talk to any woman freely. So everybody's paradigm is different.
Yes.
So you can't say that daddy created this mindset. You can't say your friends created this mindset. You were born with a certain personality type.
Okay.
And although externally, your friends, your coaches, your teachers, your parents will give you all of this expression, nobody's really teaching you how to be a man. Your friends are saying, I overcame this woman, I got this many women. Your curiosity is like, oh, what is that like? Or, your pastor is like, don't do this with women, don't do that, whatever. But as far as somebody directly teaching you, having a class and say, hey, this is what it is, most of us don't have that. What we do have is what we make up our mind to do, what we think is right.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, from my perspective, it's been always about what I thought was right. And what I thought was right and wrong when it came to women came from my mother, because she always got on me about disrespecting women. Not that I grew up disrespecting women, but I did have 5 sisters. And I think if you grew up with 5 sisters, 6 sisters, I actually had 6 sisters because we had pseudo-adopted female that came in the house. So I was always surrounded by women. And the thing about it, why did I become an introvert? Is because you get all of this estrogen around you.
Yeah.
You want to go hide in the room and get away from all these women. So for me, I grew up wanting to get away from women. Now I started out as a little boy having all kinds of little girlfriends, but there was a little thing about me, I was very sensitive in nature. So when I was teased about my affections, it bothers me. So I was teased by my mom and my two older sisters. And so they chased me around the house. Ha ha ha, you got a girlfriend, you got a girlfriend. And that kind of traumatized me. So I've written off even having any more relationships with girls after 10, no, maybe 9 years old. And I didn't have a girlfriend since then till 16 or 17 when hormonal energy started taking in. It's like I have to have a girlfriend. Why? Because I don't know what I'm doing with this energy, but I got to do something. But don't think that at the age of 16, I was in there playing and laying. I wasn't. I wanted to, but I always met the good girl. And the good girl don't want to give it up until she's married. She don't want to give. She's scared to because I'm going to get pregnant. Daddy told her if you kiss somebody, you're going to get pregnant. So I always ran into these kind of females. So I ran into these kind of females. So for me, no, that didn't happen to me till I was 18, 19.
Well,
I didn't want it to be that way. And by the time I was 18, I was at full rage. So anything was good for me at that time. Almost true. So when that did happen for me, I lived with my girlfriend, my first girlfriend, because I left home. I left home, got my own apartment. So I decided what my life was going to be like then, right? I had responsibility. And the responsibility was I had to pay some bills. I didn't know how to do it, but I had a job. I had a good job. It was a corporate job, but they only paid me at that time $5.25 an hour. And I was taking home, I don't know, $160, $180 a week, right? And I'm like, how did somebody live off that? But my rent was $160 a month at the time. And I made a deal with the landlord, being a man. I talked to a man, and I said, well, you know, I'm dating your niece. I know you want somebody in your first floor apartment, but you got to fix it up. I said, don't fix it up. I'll fix it up. Just let me have it at this rent, because it's all I can afford, and as time passes, I'll pay you more. So I worked on this house. I painted his walls. I did all these things that I thought was being a good man. This is why I thank my stepfather, why? Because he made me work. And when we did work, we did wallpapering in the house. We painted the house. We shellacked floors. We did all kinds of laboring type things that has to do with upkeep of the house. If I didn't learn that as a child, I would have never knew how to do that, nor could I make that bargain. But to me, being a man at that time was working hard to take care of your business. And I had a girlfriend, and because my mom impressed in my mind to treat women in the best manner that you can, I felt that I needed to take care of her. I needed to buy things for her. I needed to give her what she needed,
right.
Because this is what I grew up being told how a man takes care of a woman.
How did that work for you?
That worked wonderfully for me because I was willing to work. So when we're dealing with kids today, we can't blame them for their upbringing, so to speak, as much as everybody wants to jump on and say, well, you know, they got bad training or whatever. You know, people get good training at home. Mommy and daddy try. I mean, they're exceptions to this rule. We got drug addicts, alcoholics, and all these other type of things. But so don't white folks, so don't Chinese folks, so don't other folks. People have it. It's just our expression is more exploited. But the fact of the matter is, somewhere, some way, some shape, somehow, people are telling them what they should not be doing. But the other thing is that we are inherently lazy. We are inherently workers. We are inherently whatever it is we come in with. And that part, that's part of us. If we have a responsible character, aside from whether it's being drilled in us or not. I mean, because if somebody's drilling, you still won't find a way to be lazy and not get the job done. But it depends on your characteristic and your personality on whether you're going to abide by what you're being taught, you're going to listen to what you're being taught, or you're going to find your way around it. And so you're listening to two different paradigms here. So mine was always a personal responsibility and drawing upon what people told me, and it's never really always been about what people told me. For me, it's been about how I thought about what I was being told, and did I agree with it? and did it work for me? So I had no problem with taking care of a woman because I wanted to take care of a woman. So the fact of the matter is, if a man doesn't take care of a woman, he don't want to. And you cannot tell this man that, oh, he got bad training or whatever. He just don't want to do it.
Right.
And when it really comes down to it, a man either wants to provide or he doesn't want to provide. He wants to work or he doesn't want to work. Now, there are men who try to work and can't get to work, but doesn't mean that they don't want to work. They find a way to do something. And characteristically, whether he works or not, he will be doing something with the person that he's with or the people that he's around. And then there's all the other people who just allow and think it's wonderful that you should be taking care of me. You should rub my feet. You should cook and make my dinner. You should go to work for me and bring the money home to me. And I call that, pimping out that personality. But we can be taught any and everything under the sun, but whether or not we assimilate that information for ourselves and we work with it for ourselves and we decide for ourselves that's good for us, that's what we're working with.
I like to add on to that. I mean, I think, going back to the definition of defining manhood, I think men should help at least pass on to the next man in the household the traits that they have. I mean, empower, and I think that's part of the provision. That's definitely part of provision. You should provide training, based on the skills that you have, so that at least they have something, to move forward from. And it doesn't matter, like you said, it wasn't necessarily that he wanted to do it. The key thing was, later on he thanked them for it. And I think a lot of us, have thanked people who were hard on us for helping us in this area or that. I mean, my sons, I taught both of them, certain, aspects of, training that should be done, and whether they do it or not, I'm there to say, hey, this is what we need to be. This is the expectation, and I have learned, from my expression, because I've learned that every time somebody makes a mistake, they don't have to be chastised about it. For example, with my I mean, and I just say, not even with my sons, my daughters as well. Just because they make a mistake, that doesn't mean I have to go welling on it. You know what I'm saying, for the mistake that I made. I think everything has to have balance and some tact on it. And I think as a man, your protection part comes in when you're able to discern, where exactly, does the consequence lie for whatever deviation that they did from the training that I'm trying to provide for them. For example, if you didn't clean your room, why didn't you clean your room? Have we been ripping and running so much that you haven't had time to clean your room? You know what I'm saying? So, and I reflect upon myself. What's going on with me? You know what I'm saying? That's affecting them. So that when I do perform some correction or saying, why aren't you performing at this level in class or whatever? Well, have I took time to help you with your classwork?
And I noticed you had the word provider there. You had protection earlier, and you were saying that as a man's role. And I think that protect, from, if I hear you correctly, just goes far more than or further than just protecting me from hurt, harm, and danger, protecting me emotionally, protecting me. When you're saying from you even to say, well, wait a minute, have I thought this before? Have I taken care of what I need to take care of before I actually have an expectation of you? Yes.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah, and that's, for me, that's protecting my kids from myself.
Yeah.
My shortcomings. I can't get mad because they aren't going beyond my limitations. What do I mean when I say that? I could want them to be an all-A student, but have I empowered them to be an all-A student? I could want them to, be a great athlete, but do they want to be a great athlete? I've noticed, doing Little League, you have different father figures out there. You have the father figure who gets in good with the coach, and my son is going to be quarterback, no matter what talent skill the child may or may not have, and, I was all this, that, and the other, so I want my kid to be, all this, that, and the other. And, whatever cahoots, come about, or bargaining, or fashions occur, you know, they try to negotiate certain things, to get that child to be put in a certain place. But at the same time, it's not necessarily that that child really wants that. And you can see, I've noticed that in the child's performance. A lot of times they give up, I really don't want to play this, but their father's like, no, you're going to do this and stuff like that. And I even had to watch my own expression, when my son said he wanted to play football, and how exuberant I was, because I was very much into football. I was so into football that it's hard for me to watch it and not want to be on the field. So even when I was asked to coach, I said, let me back off that, because I'm going to want to be out there with football pads on, saying you need to take me down to get over your fear. But that's a bit extreme. Again, I have to protect from that. I had my childhood. I can't live my childhood through my kids. I can't live my childhood through other people's kids.
Right.
So again, with that, provision protection, I must provide an environment for them to say, I can do, I can do things within the realm of do I really want to do this? In terms of extracurricular. On the other hand, in terms of responsibilities, have I, made it conducive for them to be able to handle their responsibilities? Am I keeping my child up late where they can't be, performing well at school? Have I not fed them properly so that they can do certain things? What have I done? I have to keep constantly self-reflect. Not to say that I've done these things, but it's just giving, easy examples that people can relate
Or
to.
just check with yourself first.
Right. I have to check myself first before I even go to say, why are you doing what you're doing? That's out of line.
Well, I want to add another perspective about this protection thing. But I just want to also cap on to what you were saying with the children. When I deal with children, mine and or others, first of all, with my own, I don't never want them to be what I want them to be because I did it. When I look at my children, I look at them for who they are. And I protect them by looking at them for who they are and helping them to excel in what they're interested in.
Right.
Because they can never excel in anything that they're not interested in.
Right.
So just because you're an honor society kind of a child, I was, just because you excel in business kind of courses or you excel in collegiate kind of things, I did. Just because you were good at sports and fighting in all kinds of physical activities, I was. I can't expect my children to be me.
Right.
I can only expect them to excel in what they want to excel in. But all those things that I excelled in was because I was interested in it.
Right.
So to protect them, in my mindset, I'm looking at them and see what they're interested in right from jumping out of the gate. And then I'm encouraging that.
Right.
Maybe they pick up a baseball bat and they swing and they just like, I love to swing the bat and whatever. I want them to play football. I don't really want them to play football. But most dads or whatever, they want them to do what they missed out on. I don't ever want that from my child.
Exactly.
Or what
because I'm hurting my children.
Right.
Or what they did the most of. Oh, yeah.
Right.
So if I see him pick up a baseball bat, then I'm going to give a glove and a ball. The good thing for me is I did play adult league softball, so I know something about it. I played third base, so I knew something about football, I knew something about track, I knew something about wrestling, I knew something about all these kinds of sports, and I also know something about ABCs and mathematics, and I knew something about other things. So I have this big pool for them that when they ask a question, I draw on how good I was at something like this, and I try to give them the best of my experience, not by forcing them. Because I know when I force them, when anybody's forcing me, I shut down. So I know that they're going to shut down.
Right.
I take how I feel or felt when I was growing up. So I don't never look at a child. I look at the age that they're at, and then I bring myself back to who I was at 6 years old,
Right.
who I was at 12 years old, who I was at 17, because I remember. And then I think about how they're thinking. See, most of us parents, we're adults. We did a whole lot of stuff, and we don't want them to do stuff.
Right.
But how can you think that they're not going to do stuff if you did it?
Right.
Your parents, all did it. Yeah, you're trying to protect them. You can't protect them from that. They're going to do everything behind your back. My job is to make sure that they know they can come to me, that they can trust me enough that if they got themselves in trouble before it got too far along the line, that they can say, hey, Dad, you know what? What? I might be stern with them. I might not be stern with them. But they know that I'm going to be fair with them. As far as protecting women, sure, physically, we should try to protect the women that we're with, right? And sometimes women have an expectation of that. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But the other thing is, if I'm a protector of the woman, I have to protect her feelings. I have to protect that when we're out there and somebody is mistreating her verbally or some other way, that I need to stand there and say, hold on, you know what? We're not going to do this, and you're not going to talk to this person in this way and whatever. Because if she's relying on me that she doesn't have to be taken outside of a certain space that she doesn't want to express herself in, and outside of a ladylike space. Now, what is a ladylike space? Two different women, it's different things.
Right.
So what's a man-like space? Two different men, it's a different thing.
How do you guys deal with men that you see that are opposite of what you described and what you described in the setting? Say, for instance, you see the men that are aggressive toward women, because that was one of yours, and men that you may see that do run down on the football field and challenge that child to be just like them because they play football. How do you guys do that in your manhood?
Well, I learned to respect boundaries. It's not my job to tell another man how to raise his child, but I can say, you may be being a little, rough on, your son or something. Just try and be cordial and subtle. With other men, it depends on what the situation is.
Mm.
If it appears to be something sort of mildly abusive or something like that, I may say, hey man, you might want to back off. Hit it quick and move and detach from the situation. We got a question here, and it says, and I want to piggyback off this. It says, what does it take for men to get to the point where self-reflect? I guess it says where they self-reflect and adjust to the needs of the people they are influencing. How do we help men become good leaders and providers? Even when we provide the best structure we know, how does real manhood emerge, I guess, in this society? I look at what are we trying to cultivate? The key thing that I know for most men to flourish is, are you helping them to develop their intrinsic value for provision or protection? Meaning, are you establishing work ethic in them? If a man does not have any desire to work, he will not be very successful at providing or protecting, because both of those call for some type of work, whether it's working at adjusting his attitude, working at helping change the atmosphere of the home, working at meeting whatever needs. As he said, at age 18, he's out on his own trying to provide and protect a place for his girlfriend, which lived with him.
So let me ask you this, and I'm not sure whether the beginning of the conversation or the question was, what is it that we can teach them?
It says, what does it take for men to get to the point where self-reflect and adjust to the needs of the people they're influencing? How do we help men become good leaders and providers, even when we provide the best structure we know? How does real manhood emerge in this society? And I would like to add that it starts young. And if we don't establish that before the age of 13, it may never, it may never be established. It may take some, other experiences, to help establish that.
Well, the question for me was the we. How do we? And I noticed that you had talked about your mom and your stepfather, and you didn't say about your parents. Two-parent home, one-parent home.
Oh well, I come from a two-parent
Two-parent
home,
home.
but
So
my parents, like I said, my mother and father. My father worked multiple jobs throughout his life until he retired. My mother worked multiple jobs until she, retired, and they all working was not even an issue for me. At who ninth grade, I was cutting yards in the neighborhood. uh, I had responsibilities all as far back as I can remember. My first responsibility was taking out the trash. I was
what if that we was a single woman and not a two-parent we? What if that was saying we women, how do we do that for the men without those men that were there to teach you how to do the slabbing and all that kind of stuff? Can a woman raise a man?
No,
I agree.
a woman cannot raise a man.
I think a woman cannot raise a man.
A woman doesn't understand what being a man is. A woman can't understand how to make a man a man. Just like a man doesn't understand what it's like to have a period. You can see a period, you can see lactation, you can see pregnancy, but you don't know what it feels like, and hormonally, you don't know what it feels like. So you can't teach and tell them anything about really how to be. The only thing you can do is sympathize, and the only thing a woman can do is the same thing, sympathize. So only a man can teach a man to be a man. And if you really look at a household where a woman is running it, it always ends up that the boy becomes a young man and he starts telling his mother where to get off. By nature, a man thinks that he stands up and he barks. And they learn fast to think that they're a lion in the household. If there's no other man, when they get older, they're the man. What man? Whatever man they think they are.
right.
And it's not, I keep trying to go back to this right here, and it's really part of the first part of this question. It's not a really fair question in the beginning part of it. It's like the question was, what does it take to
What does it take for men to get to the point where they self-reflect?
stop right there? What does it take for a woman to get to the point where they self-reflect? I mean, this is a personal action. People will self-reflect when they get themselves in enough trouble.
Yes.
Simply, that's the bottom line.
Right.
If their life is too easy, they don't have to reflect on anything.
There's no challenge.
And that's kind of like the question I was asking you when I said, when did the light come on? That remember when I was saying, so when did you stop and say, wait a minute?
To be honest, when my third child, when I went through my divorce, that's when my self-reflection came on. And it was a constant evolving of seeing myself just as I am known. Seeing that, yes, my stuff does stink. Seeing that, yes, I have flaws. Seeing that it's not just my job to provide, because that's the most part of what I saw. The most part of what I saw as being a man was providing. And I thought as long as I was providing, I should come home to a smile. And, if you don't have to work or anything like that, everything should be great.
When you're saying providing, you saw your dad provide the home and the money that went in there, but you didn't see the emotional provision or the spiritual provision. Did you see him doing that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't right. I saw some men in my family praying and stuff, but I wasn't raised in the church. I wasn't raised. My mother prayed with us every night.
Your mother did.
My mother did.
But your dad, you didn't see. You just saw him going to work, coming home, paying the bills, making sure you had somewhere to live.
And he emotionally, he was always there with sports and things like that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we had a connection, but in terms of seeing that spiritual leader, I guess in the conditioned mindset of a Christian, leader, I didn't see that, and I didn't necessarily value that at that time. At any rate, what I value was he was there when I needed him to be, but there was definitely man-to-man conversations. There was definitely conversation that said, "Mike, you're wrong." Even when I was married and doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, he was like, "You're wrong. You need to, you stop doing X, Y, and Z. If you want this thing to work out, you need to do A, B, and C." And I was being told some of the same advice, elsewhere. So so the light bulb clicking came from me reflecting upon all the wrong that I had done when I noticed that, yes, this is wrong. When I noticed the fruits of these things that manifested from it. Because
Which is like you said, it was his personal time, it was his own personal experiences that
It's everybody's
bodies
personal
were.
right.
Yes.
But
You
I had got
can't
in enough trouble, you
you
know.
can't make that a mass expectation.
Mhm.
Our problem is we take this one label and we expect everybody to follow suit. We can't do that
Right.
because everybody is their own consciousness and their own personality. And the problem with us growing up is our personality and our spirituality and the being that we are individually is never really addressed because in our school system we're addressed as a body, not as an individual.
Right.
And as a body, some people acclimated to this kind of rigidity. Some people are acclimated to this kind of passivity. Some people are acclimated to all these kinds of things. And if we don't, and we can't as teachers, take each person individually and teach them all individually. So you have to teach them in this holistic kind of thing. So this is a problem uh, in how we grow. But we're not taught that. We're taught that everything is lumped in as this characteristic you abide by, as this holistic characteristic you abide by. But we're not taking into the fact that we're an individual with an individual consciousness and an individual feeling. And this right here, I might not be interested in. That's your law. You made it. It's good for you to keep whatever structure you're trying to do, but I'm a free spirit. And my life is supposed to be free. I'm a nomadic kind of person. I don't want a job. I want to just go from here to there and do pickup jobs everywhere I go. And there's some people who are very, very static. It's like they need the security of being in this one place and you go out and do this exact thing and you come back and then all these other people in between. We don't address any of this. We just address that in our systems of training. We address holistically everybody, this is how you're supposed to do it to get that. But psychologically, we're not addressing people's problems.
Were your parents really good at doing that with you and your 5 sisters separately to say that you were as that oldest boy and these 5 siblings all different personalities? Did you guys get that?
No,
Was it a whole...
what you really have to understand about me, I'm not the status quo. I'm that
No,
free
just saying
spirit
the
thing. No,
parents.
I'm trying to answer that
Oh,
question.
okay.
My parents dealt with us, I can say they dealt with us in both ways. These are the rules of the house, everybody does this.
Okay.
When somebody does something out of whatever, they pull you aside, they take you in the room, you get your spanking or you get your talking to. And then the other person who's the other party of it, this is where the equal justice things come with me. The other parent goes in and you get reprimanded in this way. You might have got a spanking, somebody else might have got a talking to, but it was according to the need of the person. But for my own self these are all my thoughts. These are all my own personal arrivals. These are my own personal expression because I was born thinking like this. I was born thinking like this, and all my teachers were extremely strict. But I was a disciplined person. I came in this world a disciplined person. So I needed teachers that were very staunch and strict and disciplined to move me. Because if you're passive, you can't move me. I'm just like, whatever, I'm not interested, so what you gonna do? I came out the box. I was fighting people from can't remember to 13. I can remember 13 because that's the last fight I had. I'm 51 today. I said at 13, it was the last fist fight I had. Why? Because I almost killed that person. And I sat there on top of his chest while his nose is bleeding and his eyes were white, looking down at him, thinking, if I go any further, I'm going to murder this boy. I'm going to be in jail probably for the rest of my life. Is this the kind of life I want to live? I thought like that, sitting on top of this boy's chest, with his arms out like this and my knees on each arm, looking down at him, wailing his head into the concrete. And I said, is this who you are? Why are you so angry like this? And then finally, one of the teachers, principal, pulled me up and snatched me up. I ain't never seen a man pick up a boy and make him feel like he was a rag doll. I thought I was something, and this man snatched me up off this boy, and I felt like I was just a little helpless little noodle, and I was like, for real? And it set me down, and I was an honor student. So I was always like both extremes. So I always evaluated in myself the positive and the negative. I grew up like this, you know? So you have to address people for who they are.
Yes.
And the only reason why I say that is because, I only say that because that's how I think and that's how I grew up. So other people address people how they think people should be addressed.
And going back to this question and kind of piggybacking on what you're saying, you know, how do we try and cultivate this in other men? I think exposure to men of standards, to men of
Principle.
principle, right? Who stand for something, who have values, you know, who are successful in their areas, is key to helping other men develop. I think that if you have a child who, uh, if you raise a child and constantly have them reflect on certain things, it will start a mental process to develop reflecting. You know, you can train. I believe you can train that in a child, but I think timing of when you start it is important. If you started at age 16, you may they they may just massage you and get out the way of it. But I think if you start, you know, at the age probably 8 to 10 or a little earlier, you know, let's reflect on what happened. You know, you can train that in their minds for them to reflect, but at what point does it become of value to them? And I agree. I think everybody has that point of I've hit this point of for myself, for my own individual expression, as he's saying, you know, that I've been in enough trouble to say I want to look at how do I take responsibility for where I am? And I think that may be a key question for people to give their male child to say, what did you have? What responsibility are you taking for this? Because you can either take responsibility, give responsibility, or be irresponsible. And your response to whatever the situation will determine where you at with those things. I've learned to at this point to just take responsibility for it. If I did something that I know God told me not to do, I take responsibility for it, and whatever judgment naturally comes from me being disobedient, because the God I serve wants to bless me. And if he says don't buy that for that person, they're not going to appreciate it. And I go ahead and buy it anyway. That judgment is they didn't appreciate it. You get what I'm saying? And it's not to say, you know, you some terrible thing happens, but it's just an example of taking responsibility for things that are done. I take responsibility for my 3 kids and their upbringing. Whatever goes on with the mothers of my children, I take responsibility for that. You know, I have, you know, one parent that's married off. I take responsibility for her. When she comes to town to see mother, I take responsibility. Is there anything that you need? You know, while you here? You know, I don't cross the line. You're married. You're not my responsibility, but I take responsibility because you are the mother of my child, and I want to make sure, you know, you're able to get to her in a safe manner and back to whatever, you know, you're doing in a safe manner. But I'm not going to overstep my bounds and say you have to come on these certain terms, because everybody, like you said, has their own individual expression. So I know when to back off, but I'm at least gonna offer, you know, offer aid or something like that. Because at the end of the day, with you, I co-parented this child, or I am co-parenting this child, and I want to make things as peaceable as they can be. I realized that I didn't have to have, you know, multiple, you know, I didn't have to go through 3 different women to have 3 different children. They could have all been by one. But based on where I was, I thought arguing was just the worst thing, you know, because my expression growing up was I saw my parents arguing all the time, and I hated it, you know. And every time an argument came up, that fear factor came in. I didn't know it was fear then, but I was just running from it. I kept running from it, you know, and that's where the sexual escapes, you know, became, because I'm running from responsibility. I'm running from taking responsibility to saying this woman needs certain other things from me that I'm not giving or that I know to give. But it took me talking to older men, who were of value and knew how to handle that because I didn't know how to handle it as a young man. Especially when we talked last thing about the egg yolk part. And I'm learning to build that. I'm learning to boil my egg. At some point, you have to be tough enough in your emotional environment to say, I can handle that. For example, today I had a situation where it was a night and day difference that I experienced with my mate. And the last time we were together, everything was just super. But today it was kind of tense, and I recognized that her expression, for whatever reason, had some different emotions going on. And I just said, am I going to allow my hurt from not being the wanting, to change where I am in this relationship? And I even had to come to the fact that she may not want to really be in a relationship. Maybe she was going through something, and I was just a a, a comforter, at that particular time. But I had to have enough respect for myself and for her to say, I'm not going to be moved by that. Going back to the standing firm and the toughening up my egg yolk, to say, I'm not going to allow you to move me with that. I spoke with God about it, and I spoke His word. I said, let your energy, work whatever needs to work in it. I surrendered, and I listened to a pastor saying, sometimes you have to surrender your relationships to Him so that He can work out whatever needs to be worked out. Because you can't force somebody to be with you, but at the same time, you need to stand firm enough to know that that's not the only person on this earth. That's not the only woman on this earth. That's not the only thing that is that's you don't have to idolize relationships. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And in that idolatry of relationships, we have these ideals of how things should go. But in those ideals, we often disrespect the individual.
Is that part of the manhood?
Yeah, I think that is part of being a man, because if you're not comfortable enough with yourself, if you're not comfortable enough with knowing that you are of value, you can allow. I mean, that's why I was suicidal. I was suicidal because I let somebody else determine my value.
Now, you kind of mentioned that earlier in our conversation about having other people kind of dictate what you're feeling like.
Right, and I had to come off that. One thing I do realize, and I say this to anybody on this show, I realize my worth. Even with 3 different kids and, all the stuff to do, there's nothing that I cannot do. I have come to that understanding that with God, there's nothing I cannot do. So, even this show was just, I had this vision 3 years ago to do this show. And it was right when I went through the divorce that was kind of like life changing for me, and I didn't actually start it until started in emotion until last summer. I just said, why am I allowing things to hold me back? I am holding myself back. I had to take responsibility. And that was me taking responsibility and standing firm. This is something that was put in me, and I know God put this into me to do. So I'm going to correct this venue because this is something that I have an outlet for. And I think everybody who comments on this show has an outlet and an expression to say, hey, we can all express ourselves and have a sounding board, with some people who've been through some things. Because notice one thing, audience, the people that I have on this show are not the typical average Joe of every day. This, to me, is the ideal woman. This person right here is a healer. And when I say a healer, he helped me get rid of a lot of the anger that I had. He helped me to understand, to have value within myself. It was a lot of things. I remember one thing that I was told about him. He probably gonna blush when I say it, but he's like, he doesn't respect a man who cannot control his sex drive. That's one of the things that I found so respectful of him because I couldn't control mine for the longest. And I was like, well, how does anybody do that? That was my paradigm. All the men in my life, whatever, and it's like, you what? Who's this? And to if you don't know better, you can't do better. That's the title of this thing. But without knowing what we can stand firm on, how can you stand on anything? Until you see values in motion, where does that concept of value come from? At some point, we have to teach these things to men at a young age. And if they don't get it at a young age, hope and confess over them that once they mature, that they will hit that wall of, I can't go no further because I realize all these other ties to a bunch of mess is holding me back. So I need to turn around and fix some of this stuff. And one of the things I did, each mother of my 3 children, I went back and I apologized to each one of them. I apologized and say, hey, look, I'm sorry for the rejection that you experienced with me. Whether it was from divorce, whether it was from breaking up, whether it was from not understanding your true needs, not knowing what I should have been at the time to provide a fruitful, meaningful relationship to you. And now that I know, I just took responsibility over that, and it freed me even further. And that's when I came to the point that I don't really need a relationship. And I had such idolatry over relationships that, it was like keep going back to this ideal relationship, and at this point, my relationship with God is to a point that what does it matter if I'm with a woman again or not? I mean, I know I would like to be with one, but it doesn't really matter anymore, I know right.
It's not necessary. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
I think what you really mean to say is that it doesn't make you. A woman doesn't make a man, and a man doesn't make a woman. I think the biggest thing that we need to come to grips with in any relationship, first and foremost, is to be honest with ourselves and to be ourselves. We are not supposed to be what our mate wants us to be. Because if we try to be what they want us to be, then we become something we are not. And if we become something we are not, we can only live up to that until it burdens us so much that we revert back to who we are. So if that is the natural cycle of things, why not just be who you are in the first place? That way, when you do attract a mate to you, that mate knows you for who you are, wants you for who you are, accepts you for who you are, not trying to make you who you're not.
Right.
That's a relationship that has a chance.
Right.
But the ones that we see the potential in somebody, everybody's got potential. We see the potential. If somebody's not realizing their potential, chances are they might know they even have some potential. They're just not interested. And they don't want to put that energy in it. Why do you think you can come and make me feel like I'm going to be what you think I should be? If I haven't done it already, I'm not interested in it. I'm just interested in being who and what I am at that time. Now, you might spark something, whatever, and I might gravitate to it, and I might have a feeling for it. But if I don't want to do this for me, and if I'm doing it for you, it's useless. I got to want to do it because I want to do it. And this is who I want to be.
Right.
That's like in the relationship where they say that representative shows up because I'm trying to change and be who you want me to be for this short period of time. And then I revert back to who I really, really am. And that's when people are saying, identify that as
All of a sudden you changed.
Wait, and really all of a sudden I became real versus all of a sudden I changed. I became who I really, really was. And I have this saying that, for that, it's like, isn't it really, really sad that we go through life changing to be what somebody else wants us to be? And by the time we get to the person who should have been for us, we've changed so far from it to they don't even want us now. And that could have been the one had we not changed for all those other wrong people to be somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
We got a couple comments. It says, this is from RJ. So it's been stated that only a man can show a young man how to be a man. I agree. So the question is, if there's only a woman in the home, how does she teach him what's needed to develop into a successful man?
I can answer that. I was a single parent mother.
Go ahead.
I was a single parent mother, and he's 32 years old right now. And a man told me, is why I agreed with that I could teach I could only teach him but so much. I could teach him how to be a good person. I could teach him manners. I could teach him how to treat a lady, because I am one. He has a sister, or so I could do all of that. But it took a man to do that. And I never forget it. And I pass this all the time. A man told me one time, even about my son, to always make sure that he had money in his pocket. A man feels some kind of way when he has money in his pocket. Another man said, when you decide to divvy out the allowance to your children, always give the man the most, because he's always going to be the one that has to take care of his sister or the girl or so. And my son just had real men who would come into their manhood around him, that he was in their presence, who taught him how to do those things and take care of the women and do the doors and think about them and their feelings and all of that kind of stuff, because I don't think that I could have done it. I mean, I think he's a good guy now, but he was a man because he had men in his life, and it wasn't his dad. His dad, which of course was a man that was there, but he wasn't the man that taught him that it was okay for him to hug another man and look a man eye to eye in his face. And when you tell him you're going to do this, keep your word and do this. And call him back if you're not going to do this. And pay your bills on time.
Right.
This is what men think about other men, that they don't trust when they walk up to them, and they can tell, like, that's a brother I can't trust. This is what they're feeling. A man taught him that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, because I had several men. My neighbor, was a very business-minded man, and he helped cultivate that in me. My father was very, business-minded. There were a lot of things that made me, fairly successful, business-wise, where I am now, in terms of other men helping develop it. How to stand firm, how to stand firm with other men, and I think that's an aspect, that I had to learn to do. So, even if it's talking to them about the other kids, like like I was saying, I hit it and quit it. You know what I'm saying? In terms of, I see you kind of going a little bit overboard with your kid. I'm gonna say something to address it. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I gotta let you handle your own household. And I had a situation happen Monday. Working on this guy's roof and trying to, fix this flue pipe. And this is the flue pipe is where the furnace exhaust comes out, and he has a newborn infant in there, and he would, I told him, the day before that I'd be there, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I couldn't go in the house to make sure that the flue pipe was still connected on the bottom, because when you move it, sometimes they can come loose. So I'm concerned that, it's still cold and exhaust may come up, and permeate through the house if there's a leak, and I'm like, dude, I really need to address this. So I, went to him 3 times. He said, I'm not there. I don't want to let you in the house. I had to respect, although I had all legal rights to go in there based on him renting that property, I had to step back and say, you know what? I told him straight up. I said, I educated him. I said, what you don't know about what just happened, this thing could have come loose. You have an infant whose room is right below this thing, and once the smoke fills up this area, it's moving around in the house because it can't escape up. So it's your responsibility to make sure your family is taken care of, however you do that. Because right now you don't value what I'm trying to tell you. And I sent it to him by text message and tried to verbally explain it to him, even though, he just was not trying to listen to me for whatever reason he was going through. And I had to recognize that his understanding was not what my understanding was. And even though I tried to explain, the more I explained, the more he got, impatient with me. So I said, instead of this blowing up into, a fist fight, because these are the type of words that are coming from him, I said, you know what, let me back up off this, because I don't want to get to the point where I feel like, we have to fight about something that's, I'm not really going to fight you for. You feel what I'm saying? Because of exchanges of expressions, because you don't understand, and I care more about your kids based on my understanding of the situation than I feel you do. And I had to respect that maybe my communication is not to where, or maybe something else is going on in the household that he don't want me to know about. So that was just one of the times I had to walk away. I had to be mad enough to walk away and say, dude, I hope you get somebody else to look at this. These are the repercussions that can happen. And I sent it via text. So you can't argue with black and white. You Either he read it or he didn't, you know. And we have another coming down. Well, to sign off for women, we need men to understand that women need more than just physical needs. To have a holistic relationship, mental, spiritual, emotional needs, in addition to being a provider. And I hope that was expressed here. Um, I hope that's what we've all been trying to convey, that, as men, we need to provide more than just physical expressions, of love, and I'll even add that provision extends beyond just a stable home being provided.
I think I try to address that indirectly with the children.
Right.
That I put myself in the mindset of the child at that age. It's my job, if I'm a provider,
Amen.
to try to understand who and what I'm providing for.
Right.
Meaning, if it's for the children, what is the acclimation? What do they need? Try to provide that. If it's my mate, I need to study my mate. I need to understand my mate.
Right.
I need to understand what she needs. But I also need to understand as a person that physical provision is one thing. And that's a thing that makes a woman feels good. But women need to know that you have a focus for them.
Right.
And in that focus, like I said, sometimes you got to protect them in the sense that when they're being mistreated externally, sometimes you got to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you have to do everything they say, but you do have to be in a space where you can hear what they have to say. And you have to be able to respond in a way that they can feel comfortable so that they can respect you. They're not going to respect you if you're always dictating to them. They're not going to respect you if you're always telling them, oh, that's okay, don't worry about it, or don't worry about it, and you never do anything. A woman wants to know you got their back, because a woman by nature will always have your back. In every which way but loose. We talk about the heart and egg yolk, because they're conditioned to be very strong emotionally. We're not. We're conditioned to be externally hard. But crack our eggshell, we're nothing but jelly. But they're conditioned to take so much. They're used to taking so much. Even when delivering and bearing a child, they're taking so much. So they learn to be hard inside because they have to be. But to provide for your mate, you have to look at her. You have to understand what she needs. And what she needs isn't always money. She needs attention. She needs affection, and she needs to be able to trust you enough to rely on you. And the only way she's going to trust you enough to rely on you is by you following through with actions.
Right.
That makes her feel good. And in turn, by nature, she's going to return to you with action. Because that's all she knows how to do is reciprocate. But a woman wants to feel, a man wants to dictate and say, I'm the man. Well, talking is one thing and being is another thing.
Right.
I'm not a talker. I learned how to talk. When I was shy, I didn't know how to talk. I only learned how to talk maybe 20 years ago. So I had a whole lot of stuff bottled in because I studied people. And the common denominator is that anybody can talk a talk, but not everybody can walk the talk.
Right.
I don't want to hear what you got to say. I want to see what you got to say.
Right.
Because I'm not going to listen to your verbiage. I'm going to listen to what I see you do. Because what I see you do is really who you are.
Right.
Anything else, I got no respect for. And I can't believe that you are anything that's filled with words. I just can't.
And that goes on all levels of manhood. Even with, growing up, most guys would say he's probably going to be the one that beats the other guy because he's not talking a whole bunch of crap. He's just sitting back there listening, and I noticed, and that's on a low level, of it. But coming back to the high level, are you going to do the do's that make life functional for your household, for your atmosphere, for you, whatever expression that you developed in your life, whatever situational circumstances that you created in your life? I think if we don't observe our environment and take responsibility for that environment or atmosphere that we have allowed to manifest, or created ourselves, then we're not being the man that we were created to be. You are put in a situation to help everybody that is in that household to, to be successful. If you're going to lead, then your example must be exactly what he said. Take notice of your children. Take notice of your mate. At what point does it make sense to push a little harder, to back up a little bit? This one can't take that. I notice when I say this, this happens. If I talk to my daughter like this, she shuts down. If I talk to my mate like this, she shuts down. If I talk to my son like this, he shuts down. So where am I going to change my expression to not shut everybody down, to help people blossom within their individual expression, within the confines of your home? You know, what makes them comfortable and confident enough that when they're exposed to things outside, that they can come to it, as he said earlier, to be able to express that I don't really want to do that, and feel comfortable with telling other kids that this is not something I want to do, and feel good enough about themselves, and feel loved enough, you know, by their household, that I can say no to some of these other pressures that other kids are saying yes to
and it's okay.
Right, and it's okay.
I just want to reflect back on the question someone asked earlier. When does a man reflect on being what he's supposed to be, or what brings him to that point? Caring.
Yeah.
He has to care. When he starts caring, he pays attention. When he doesn't care, so what? It's the point where he actually starts to care about what is going to happen in the environment,
right?
His personal environment, and the environment that he has cause and effect over. When he starts to care more, then he pays more attention, and he does better. He makes the changes he needs to make. Why? Because he cares. When he doesn't care, it's like, just do what I say. I don't care. Just do what I say.
As a matter of fact, it follows up with, do what I say. I don't care.
I do what I say.
Yeah. I don't care. Yeah. Right.
So it's when we care. You know, when we care. And that's for the woman too. That's for everybody. When we care, we reflect and we look at what we want the presentation to look like. I gotta care enough to plan. I gotta care enough to change my tactics. I gotta care enough. I gotta care enough. But when I don't care, I'm not gonna try to do anything.
Right.
Why am I trying? Why do I don't want to work? I don't care.
I don't care.
Because somebody's gonna do it for me. Why, whatever? Because I don't care.
Yeah.
When you get yourself in trouble and you see that ain't nothing gonna help you, you gotta care enough for yourself first.
Right.
To do something better than where you are. But you're never gonna get to that point unless you suffer something. You have to suffer something to force you to look at what I need to do.
Right.
And when you look at what I need to do, you gotta care about it because you need to make a change. What do I need to change to stop this from happening in my life?
When you care about it being something different.
Right.
Than what it really is.
And I think that is a sign of maturity also, male or female, to say, even in relationships, you know, whether it's mate relationships or it's, you know, relationships with your kid, care enough to make the necessary changes to adjust the atmosphere to be more conducive to functioning. And functioning, sometimes we have to have the difficult conversations. Sometimes we have to face our fears. You know, I'll be honest, I was scared of the dog because I used to watch for whatever reason. Okay, let me stop making this. I was scared of the dog up until I had my daughter. Okay, and my daughter is 12 years old now. So do the math. And I just sat in the dark. I said, I am not going to bring a child into this world and be scared of the dark. I watched horror show after horror show after horror show, and all I could think of, and matter of fact, my best friend used to scream out crazy stuff when I was riding my bike home from his house. And you know,
In the dark.
in the dark, you know, even though him and his mom would be watching me ride my bike home, but you know, after watching a horror movie at his house, so for whatever reason I was scared of the dark, but I had to say I'm not gonna be scared of the dark anymore, you know. And when my child was born, she wasn't scared of the dark.
But it was like you had just said, it was because you cared
Cared
enough
enough.
about your daughter who was being born for you not to be afraid of the dark. Because he cared enough about it, yes.
Right.
Well, before you didn't have any reason to care enough about the dark.
I guess I did, but I just, you know,
Didn't
I
care.
didn't,
You
yeah, I
didn't
guess you're right. I
You
didn't,
didn't care.
I
I'm
didn't
just saying,
care.
yes, because you
You
cared
worried,
then.
but you didn't care.
You didn't care. 'Cause you
Yeah,
cared
that's what it was.
then
I worried.
that I've got to take care of this daughter, and I care about what I provide for her, and I care about handling her in the dark and all this. So you just cared, I guess. Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that was a great show. I thank all of our participants. I thank you all. I thank For Us By Us, RJ, and we had one more commenter. We want to know. I thank you all for your comments. You helped to bring out some other points, and I hope we shine some light on whatever situation that you're experiencing. And I hope the care in you allows or helps to manifest care in others. Um, Thank you all for joining our show. Be blessed.